started when I was 6 years old. I was in school. It was the middle of a reading lesson and I needed to pee badly. At that age, actually, a fair few kids still wet themselves, and I always got paranoid about embarrassing myself in public like that. I stuck my hand up and told Miss Zebby that I needed to use the bathroom. After the usual speech about how I should have gone at break, she gave me the key to the disabled access toilet, as it was the closest one to my classroom. It was the middle of 5th period, and the corridors were empty and seemed carnivorous to me. I was short, scrawny thing back then. I sometimes had trouble with doors, especially unlocking them, and I fumbled for a good minute or two, trying to get the blasted thing open. Anyway, as I sat on my porcelain throne, there came a knocking at the door. "Somebody's in here," I called, disgruntled at the disturbance. There came a pause, and then the knocking resumed. It was faster now, more determined. "Wait a minute." The knocking slowed and a voice replied, "Let me in. I need to come in." The speaker's tone was thin and reedy. An adult I didn't recognise. I may have been 6, but I had a fairly good understanding of bathroom etiquette. Mainly that you don't let more than one person in an area slightly larger than a cupboard. "Go away." The knocking intensified again until it was a frantic drumbeat. Just a few feet away from me and out of sight, I heard the voice shouting something, growing more and more desperate. "Let me in! Just open the door, please!" I was terrified by this point. The hammering and yelling was so loud, and yet nobody had come to investigate it. Eventually, my teacher came to find me, angry because I'd been gone almost half an hour. When I refused to open the door to her, she got a spare key from the receptionist, and then she took me to the headmaster's office and called my parents. I was suspended for the week. It was a few weeks before my next encounter with this phenomenon. I had just celebrated my 7th birthday, and my family were having a barbecue in my honour. It was a glorious, sunny day, but as soon as we'd set everything up in the ultimate behind our house, the coal refused to light. My dad asked me to go get some fire starters from the shed in our front garden. It was pretty cramped inside, and I wouldn't fit all the way in. So I just opened it up, stood on my tiptoes and reached the shelf holding my objective, then shut the door, but as I turned away, a frantic knocking came from the other side. "Open up, I need to get through." The voice was not the one I'd heard the month before. It was deeper, more brooding and angry. I said nothing and hurried away. I didn't know what was happening, but it was happening, and it frightened me. As I walked away, there came a final thump, like a fist being slammed against wood, and I heard the voice again. "You little bastard, I'll rip your fucking teeth out, let me through." I ran back to my party and spent the rest of the day glancing over my shoulder. Now, as you may have guessed by now, there was a lot of these voices. I count at least 30 total. Every month or so, I used to get them, pleading to be let through the door. Almost always, it would be immediately after I'd shut the doors behind me, as though these strange entities had been following me. I never told anyone, but to be honest, I kinda just got used to it. It always made me jump, and some of these voices would make me feel uneasy, but I knew that I was safe, so long as I didn't open the door. Some of these voices I got so used to the extent that I even named a few. There was one that always used to appear at my front door at home. Now we have frosted glass and I could see the silhouette of an average-sized man wearing a cap of some kind. He never spoke, but occasionally would push envelopes containing blank pieces of paper through the letterbox. I called him the postman. He was one of the more disturbing ones. If I tried to speak to him, he would look up sharply, then begin a knocking. I generally left the postman alone. 20 years on, and I've retained as much normality as possible. I have plenty of friends, and I even have an on and off again relationship with a girl I met last year. Not bad for a guy who wakes up in the middle of the night and listens intently to noises you can hear on the other side of a door. Yeah, my buddies think I'm strange and kooky, but they put up with it. They're all great. I miss them. You see, things have started to get strange. Well, stranger than usual, I suppose. 3 weeks ago, I woke sweating and crying, though I didn't know why. My dream had been, from what I recall, fairly normal, when a huge shadow had abruptly fallen over everything. Literally, the second I opened my eyes, there came a knocking at my bedroom door. Not just some knocking though, this was truly frantic. Please, please help us, it replied. I was surprised. It was the sadistic, angry voice that I remember hearing from my father's shed. But it seemed genuinely sincere. There was a pained tone to it too, as though the speaker were grievously wounded. I actually found myself pulling back the sheets to get up, but I hesitated. I had never before been tempted to open the door. I suppose, as a child, I'd so rigorously drummed into my head that whatever lay beyond that door was, well, evil, that it was just common sense. To be quite honest, I came very close to letting that thing in my room, but I managed to hold out in the end. It got worse. Just 2 days later, I was at my local corner shop. I just paid for a bottle of milk and a newspaper, when a great force slammed against the shop door. Simultaneously, a voice began screaming, a long, keening squeal of pain. I rolled to face the door, but there were so many flyers plastered over the glass that I could only just make out the silhouette of a woman on the other side, slapping her palms against the window. The shopkeeper stared at me as though I were crazy. In the end, I asked if he had a bathroom I could use, murmured some half-thought-out excuse and hid there for 10 minutes until the screaming stopped. There were 4 more incidents between then and now, a mixture of screams and tearful begging. The postman stopped by yesterday too. He knocked politely before sliding his usual letter through the letterbox. Then another. And then another. A total of 10 plain, brown envelopes. The postman waited for a few minutes, knocking occasionally, and then he left me alone. Each letter contained a sheet of A4 paper, but somebody had taken a black pen to the pages, scribbling, shading them with such vigour there was a large tear around the centre, and the edges were frayed. I shoved them back into their envelopes, and I tried to put it out of my mind. Earlier, my bedroom door shook violently. It wasn't a scream, or a howl, or a roar that I heard. It was just crying. Dozens and dozens of voices sobbing quietly. Another blow struck my door. Plaster flaked from the walls and twirled to the carpets. Still, no pleas or bargaining. Just sobbing. I jumped up from my chair. A hairline crack split the frame of the door in one corner. My phone began to ring and I heard a sharp rapping at the glass of my window behind the curtains. I tried answering my phone, but it was simply yet more crying. Not even sobbing though, more like bawling in terror and anguish. I hung up, but it kept ringing. So I took the battery out. I have shoved most of my furniture against the door and window. It's been 3 hours since the latest attempt at entry began. The battering has not abated, nor has the crying, and I'm fairly sure my door won't hold much longer. As for my mediocre barricade, it could be swept away in 2 minutes. I find myself faced with the very real possibility of death. So I'm writing this memoir of some sorts, just in case something does happen. What do they want? Do they even want to hurt me? They seemed fearless, even malicious before. What could have driven them to this? Maybe I should open the door. Maybe I should let them in. Silence fell. I realized that even the crying had ceased. For a whole minute, I sat there. Then I got up and hurried to my door, eager to escape the claustrophobic situation I was in. Perhaps I'd go outside, where I could be far away from any doors and from the damned knocking. I pulled away my barricade, and I turned the handle. Locked. Kneeling, I peered through the keyhole. Beyond my bedroom door was not the corridor that I remember, but another room, some kind of library or classroom, I think. It seemed unoccupied but for one kid just sitting there reading with his back to me. I banged on the door. "Hey kid, let me in." He glanced over his shoulder. "Yeah, over here. Could you open the door, please? I can't. I'm in detention. I'm not supposed to talk to anyone. Go away. He turned from me. Confused and exasperated, I began to stand up. A loud bang shattered the silence once more. I realised it sounded like a fist being pounded against glass. My window! I heard it again, but this was not the frantic knocking of somebody wanting to get inside. This was not even an attempt to break in. Whatever was beyond that curtain and glass knew I was inside. It knew I was frightened in the most predatory and sadistic way possible. It wanted me to be afraid. I turned my back to the door and began hammering on it frantically. Hey kid, let me in, okay? I really need you to open this door.